exactly what the Gemara is retracting from. But anyway, the bottom line is the Gemara concluded that we we start on Shmini Atzeres, and that's how we continue. We continue from Shmini Atzeres. When Daf Hey Yom and Aleph, we're just concluding with this point right before the Mishnah that Kivan Shehischel Shuv Einay Paisek, that since you start, you don't stop, and that is basically the conclusion of this Gemara, that even in Bavel, even outside of Israel, you start mentioning rain, you don't stop, even though there was a view that said, well, you start on Shmini Atzeres and you stop and then continue on Simchas Torah. There was such a view. So the conclusion of the Gemara is no, that you start mentioning rain on Shmini Atzeres and you do not stop. You continue mentioning rain until the first day of Pesach. Okay, so
can you tell me the outscroll page?
Yeah, it must be 5A1 because we're on the third line page.
Thank you.
I'll double check.
I'm on 6. I don't know. 5A1.
5A1. Va'af Rav Hadabe. It's the second paragraph. So it says Va'af Rav Hadabe. Rav also retracted and changed his mind. Initially, he wanted to say that there's a difference between Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah, that you start on Shmini Atzeres, then you stop mentioning rain for Mincha Ma'ariv, then you start again on Simchas Torah. So the Rav retracted, and he said basically once you start, you don't stop. And Rav Chananel said the name of Rav, that you count 21 days in the month of Tishrei, and then you start asking for rain, which basically means on Yom Chaf Beis. So what day is 22nd day of Tishrei? And so the 22nd day of Tishrei is Shmini Atzeres, right? So he says you count 21 days and then you start mentioning rain, and the comparison he gives is similar to the way you count 10 days from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. And what is it emphasizing? The same way you count. I know how to count 1, 2, 3, 4. What do you need to compare it to the days you count Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur? And that's how you have to count 21 days. So what he means to say is you start from the first day of Rosh Hashanah, not from the second day of Rosh Hashanah. You have to understand that most months that have 2 days Rosh Chodesh, so the days of the month really start from the second day Rosh Chodesh, because the first day of Rosh Chodesh is always the 30th day of the previous month. Whenever you have 2 days Rosh Chodesh, so the new month really begins on the second day Rosh Chodesh. The first day Rosh Chodesh is really the last day of the previous month. But here, when it talks about the 21 days, you start counting 21 days from the first day of Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is not the same. That those 2 days of Rosh Chodesh are not the same, because on Rosh Hashanah, the first day is really day one of the year and day one of the new month. So on Rosh Hashanah, you have to count from the first day, similar to the way you count the 10 days from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, that it always starts. You start from the from day one. Now the Gemara says that maschil bekivan shehischol shuv paisik. You start then, and once you start, you don't stop. The halach is since you start shuv paisik, you don't stop. So basically, that's the final conclusion of the Gemara, that you start on Shmini Atzeres. That's how we do it, and even though it's like you could say it's maybe a speika diyayma, so you start on Shmini Atzeres, maybe we should really use Simchas Torah, and maybe we should stop now. Then one of the opinions in the Gemara said how once you make it holy, you're going to make it weekday, mundane. In other words, once you sanctify it, you're going to stop. You're gonna then question it and make it like you're not sure if it's holy. And so basically, the conclusion of the Gemara was. The Gemara gave a second additional option, I should say a third option, of maybe you should do Musaf and Mincha and then stop for Ma'ariv and Shachris and then start again on Simchas Torah. But the conclusion was that once you start, you don't stop, and that's basically the conclusion here. Is once you start mentioning it, you don't stop. it is interesting that the 10 days of we call them Aseret Tshuva between that are from between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, but the truth is they're not really between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The 10 days start from the beginning of Rosh Hashanah through Yom Kippur. Not really, it's interesting the term that the Gemara uses. Hasidic philosophy talks about it a little, how you can call there are 10 days that are between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. If they're not really between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, really they begin Rosh Hashanah and end the end of Yom Kippur. In other words, when you count the 10 days, and there aren't 10 days in the middle of between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, there's only 7 days really in the middle between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It has to do with the Kabbalistic ideas of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur that are part of there's elements of them that are part of the 10 days of Aseret Tshuva. There's elements of them that are Rosh Hashanah on its in its own right. And then there's elements that are the concept of that the Aseret Tshuva are also part of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Okay, the next Mishnah says, "Ad Masai Shailan Asay Shamim." Until when do we ask for rain? And this is the Mishnah that we have seen brought before because the Gemara thought that there's contradictions between when you the previous Mishnah and this Mishnah. Anyway, so this Mishnah says, "Until when do you ask?" And Rabbi Yehuda here says, "Achiyavar Pesach." Previous Mishnah had said that Rabbi Yehuda said until the first day of Pesach, the Musaf. Here it says Achiyavar Pesach. So I thought there was a contradiction between the two Rabbi Yehudas. The conclusion of the Gemara was that there's Trei Tanoi, was it Trei Tanoi Alibad Rabbi Yehuda? Two opinions. But anyway, we had other answers that the Gemara tried to say that it means Achiyavar. Pesach means Achiyavar Shliach Tzibur on the first day of Pesach, of the Shachris, or Achiyavar is Van Shchitas Pesach. But the conclusion of the Gemara seems to be that it's Trei Tanoi. It was two Tanoim. So here we have Rabbi Yehuda saying Achiyavar Pesach, that you continue asking for rain until after Pesach. Until Pesach is over, you would, even in the Chol Hamoed days, you would be asking for rain. You would ask for rain. Now, Rameir Aimer Achiyitzi Nisan, Rameir says you wait until the month of Nisan ended, and that you continue asking for rain until the month of Nisan ends. Shneimar, as it says, Yered Lechem Geshem Mer Malkush Berishon, that rain fell, the Yera and the Malkush fell in the month of Nisan. It was a specific situation there where there was a famine, and ultimately the rain was beneficial. So you see that rain is beneficial throughout the month of Nisan. So that's how that's the source of Reb Meir, that actually it's a Nisan. Now I did want to just mention on the previous Gemara, there was a famous question that Mordechai, not famous question, the question that we spoke about, Mordechai had asked it over here, about why do we push off asking for rain until Zayin Cheshvan, or even mentioning, according to Rabbi Yechanan, seemingly you would push off mentioning rain until Zayin Cheshvan because people are Eila Regel. Seemingly, what about the people coming to the Beis Hamikdash for Pesach? You also should not be asking for rain or even mentioning rain. We should stop 2 weeks before Pesach because people have to travel. So it's interesting. The Rishonim don't seem to pick up on the question, but we did mention an answer given by I think it's Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, that to start something new, that you can push off, but to stop something that's good, that's a blessing, you can't stop it. It's much easier to start something than to stop it. And then he gives another answer that people know to bring their raincoats, so it's no problem. It's when they go for Sukkot and it rains, that's a problem. They don't have their rain gear with them to return. So anyway, those are two answers that we mentioned. Okay, so anyway, the Mishnah here, we have this Machlekes, Reb Yehuda, Reb Meir. Until when do you ask for rain? We of course stop on as it said we stop the first day of we stop right before Pesach. But Amalei Rav Nachman, the Rav Yitzchok, Rav Nachman said, Rav Yitzchok, you're in Nisan, you're Marcheshvan. You're really in Nisan, you're is in Marcheshvan. So what does this? What does it mean in the Mishnah? The end of the Mishnah mentioned that Yoira and Malkush fell in Rishon. It's a pasuk really, but what does it mean? Why does the Mishnah bring you? It doesn't seem to fit with the famous rule that Yoira is the first rains. They always come in Cheshvan. Yoira Cheshvanu. the Tanya, because we're in the Brisa here, Cheshvan Malkush b'Nisan. Yair is really in Cheshvan. Malkush is in Nisan. So Cheshvan is much earlier, is right at the beginning of the rains. Amalei Hachi Amar Rabbi Yechanan. He said, this is Rabbi Yechanan's. This is what Rabbi Yechanan said. That may Yoel ben Psuel in this guy in the days of the prophet of the Navi Yoel, which is a Sefer Yoel. So in the days of that prophet. So it says about him, about this time. It says Yasser. It says about this specific time. There was the Yasser Gezem Achal Arba, that the Gezem locust ate the whatever the Gezem locust left over. Achal Arba, the Arba locusts ate. So there was basically a famine, and the 7-year famine it included a 4-year plague of Arba, and this is actually what we're learning about in Arba Choshech Hamakas B'Chor. The next week's parsha, that the Arba was it says over there, and the Rashi brings this, that it says that it was the worst plague ever, that there never was Arba Kamayu, that there never was, there never will be such Arba. And you find in the days of Yoel that it was even, that it says the same thing there, that there never was and never will be. So which one was worse? Right, that's Rashi's question in Chumash, next week's parsha. So the answer that Rashi gives is that it depends if it was all 4 types of locusts or it was just one type of locust. Now, one was talking about when it had all 4 types of locusts, this was the worst. One with the one type of locust, this was the worst. So each of them had a element that was worse than any other plague, similar plague. So anyway, the pasuk over here about Yoel, so it says that there was a specific thing that was going on, and the Yair rains didn't rain until much later, when even though they're supposed to rain in Cheshvan, they didn't rain until Nisan. So that's the story. That year Adar came and there still was no rain. Yardalhem Revia Rishon Bacham Nisan. I have to understand this is after 7 years. Said this is 7 years of famine. So anyway, the first rain came down Bacham Nisan on the first day of Nisan. So the Navi, the prophet Yoel, told the Klal Yisrael to Bezaru, go out and plant. They told him, what do you mean? We have the little we have to eat, we're going to go plant. A person that has a kav, a certain measure of chitim, of wheat, or 2 kavs of barley, should he eat it and live, or you should plant it and then he dies? Yeah, it'll grow, but he died. So what do you really want? You expecting us to go plant it? And Amalahem, he said, I understand your situation. And Afal Pikain, nevertheless, this is what Hashem wants you to do. Tzu V'Zardo, go plant. So they did. They listened, even though it was Mesiras Nefesh, really, but that was what Hashem wanted them to do. So when a miracle happened for them. They did what they had to, and a miracle happened. And it was revealed to them what was inside the walls, the grain that's in the walls from the mice. The mice was hiding in the and what's in the holes of the ants. They went and planted on the 2nd day of Nisan, the 3rd day of Nisan, and the 4th day of Nisan. So this is when they planted. And then it rained a second rain, the Revia, another Revia Shnia, the second rain of the Yaira, came in the 5th day of Nisan. And they even were able to bring the Yomer, which was an incredible miracle that it grew in such a fast amount of time. In the 5th and the 11th, it grew in 11 days, which was the 16th of Nisan. A grain that normally takes 6 months to grow, it grew in 11 days. So from the 5th to the 16th, it actually grew. The grain was able to grow, and karev that normally takes 6 months. Karev mitzvua shall was brought from a grain of 11 days. On that generation, it said that those that plant with sadness, with tears, those that plant dimmas, tears, those that plant with tears, will with joy,
happiness,
joy they will harvest. So they will be very joyous. So in other words, they planted it with tears. Why? Because they were basically giving away the little food that they had, and then the joy they had when things grew so fast. It was a tremendous joy. Says they went and they cried. Noisei Meshach Hazara, they carried the seed container. And what does it mean? They walked and cried. Noisei Meshach, and they carried while carrying the container of the seeds. Rabbi Yehuda means the animal that was the ox that was plowing. It was going. It was and it was crying, and v'chazirasai, and when it returned, oichel chazizman atelem, was able to eat from the growth of the furrow. In other words, a little grew already. It began sprouting. This is what it says by Yavrina, that he will return with joy. So that means the animal return that he returned with joy, that on his way back it was already able to eat something. My nice, what does it mean that he was carrying the sheaves, the bundles? So Amar of Chizdav, Amar of Masisa Tanet. Some say Rav Chizda said this. Some say it's learned in a brisa. Kana zerish sayim, that the kana is the stalk of the grain, and the shiboilas is the ear of the grain. So it says the stalk was normally a stalk is 3 or 4 times the size of the ear, but here it was the stalk was half the size of the ear. You can imagine how big the ears were, and the kana was a zeres. The kana of the stalk was the size of a zeres. Zeres is a half amma, 3 tfachim, and the shiboilas was the rasayim was 2 zereses, and that means that it was double the size. It was so much. It was tremendously. It was huge. It carries like carrying alu maisav, his whatever he could handle, his sheaves, his bundles. In other words, it must have been extremely heavy. They were limited. They had to carry carrying their sheaves. In other words, it's using a term that's like personal, dependent on how much they could handle. Now you say alu maisav, that it was so heavy. So here we have some statements of Rav Nachman saying to Rav Yitzchok. We'll see. It continues a lot of statements from him. So Maidich said, what does it mean in the pasuk? Hashem l'rav. Hashem called the famine. He also came to the land. He called the famine, and it came to the land for 7 years. Sheva Shanim for 7 years, and that was the famine came for 7 years. What did they eat during those 7 years? So here Rav Yitzchok answers him. He says Rav Yitzchok told him in the name of Rav Yochanan that the first year they ate what they had in the houses. The second year they ate what was in the fields. The third year the animal that was kosher. On the 4th year, the pikuach nefesh, they didn't have any other food, so they ate the treifa animals. The chamishis basar shkatim or masim. The 5th year they didn't even eat animals; they ate the creeping creatures, which was really disgusting, abominable. And that was the 5th year. The 6th year, shishas basar b'nei Isayim. The 6th year they ate the flesh of their own sons and daughters. And shviyas basar was Isayim. The 7th year was so bad that they even ate the flesh that was on their arms. Who knows how was it possible that they even had grain to plant? That's the seemingly surprising. They were eating the flesh of their hands, their arms. Rav Nachman said Rav Yitzchok. What does it mean in the pasuk? Another statement from Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchok. What does it mean that inside in your midst is holy, and Hashem says, I will not enter the city. Now, it seems the opposite. If it was holy, then Hashem Davka should enter the city. Because it's holy, that's why you're making it holy, you're doing good deeds. Hashem says, I'm not going to come to your city. So Rav Yitzchok answered Rav Nachman, and he said, this is what Rav Yochanan said. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem said, like, I will not enter the Yerushalayim above until I enter the Yushalayim below. In other words, that in other words, I will enter in your midst. I will be kadosh, meaning I will enter before I go into my city above. So until I go into your city will come first. Until I go into your city, I will not enter my city above. So Bekir B'cha Kadosh, I was like, first I will go into Bekir B'cha, into your midst. I will bring my holiness. Bekir B'cha will be in your midst. Before or until then, I won't go to my city. It means that Hashem first comes to Yerushalayim below before he enters his city, Jerusalem above. Is there really such a city of Yerushalayim above? The Gemara answers in yes, that it says Yerushalayim that's built up. It's like the city that's attached to it together and joined to it. That means that there is some counterpart, a city in above. Okay, Yitzchok. Rav Nachman said to Rav Yitzchok, that what does it mean in this pasuk that it says that va'achas with one, that va'achas yivaru v'yichsulu musar havolim etzu. With one they will be destroyed, v'yichsulu, and they will be seal, like foolish. Musar havalim etzu, the musar, the rebuke of hevel, of nothingness, of in vain. Etzu, it's wood. What does this pasuk mean? It's a poetic verse in Yirmiyah. So Amalei Hachi Amar Rabbi Yechon is what Rabbi Yechon says. Achas Hishem versus Sham Gehenim. It's one sin that causes the Rishayim to be destroyed. Yivaru destroyed in Gehenim, burned. Bir chametz, like burned in Gehenim. So Mahi, what is it? Avodah Zarah. It's one sin that the Avodah Zarah is that sin that causes them to be destroyed. It says Ksiv Hacha Musar Havala Meitzu. It says here that the rebuke of vain is like is wooden, meaning referring to the idols, I guess, wooden idols. Ksiv Hasim, it says over there Hevel Hema Maisi Tatuim. That it says over there that it's vain, the work of Maisa Tatuim, the work of delusion. So basically, Hevel is referring to the idols, just like it says over there. It's talking about the idols, Tatuim. So here also the Hevel refers to the same thing. In other words, we found the pasuk Hevel, that the same word Hevel refers to Avodah Zarah. So here also it's referring to Avodah Zarah. So in other words, achas, with one sin, Yivaru v'yichselu musar havalim etzu, that they'll get one sin, they'll get burned in Gehenim for this worshiping these wooden idols. Okay, Rav Nachman now asks another question. Rav Nachman, Yitzchok, my what does it mean? Kishaim Reisa Sa'ami, two evils my nation did for worshiping idols. It says Tartin hu dahabu esrin v'arba. It says Tartin hu dahabu. Is it two sins, two evils? Esrin v'arba shvigalu. It's really 24 sins, or because of the 24 books of the Tanakh, they were transgressed. We saw two pshatim, if you remember, when Rashi brings down two pshatim. One is that's 24 sins that they transgressed, or it's 24 books of the Torah. There's 24 books if you add up all the Chamisha Chumshei Torah, the 5 books of Moses, and the books of the prophets, the books of the writings. It's 24. So they either refers to 24 sins or 24 books. So what does it mean? Two? They did 2 sins. So Rabbi Yochanan said that achas shehi, next page 5b, shkula kashtayim, it's one sin that's equal to 2. It's ma'aniya. What is that? Avodah Zarah. There's one sin that's equal to 2 sins. It's called Avodah Zarah. As it says, Kisham Reisa Sa'ami, that two sins my nations did. And basically the way Rashi explains it is that there's Kutiyim and Kedarim, and Kedar, the two different nations, they worship two different idols, and my nation went and worshipped both of them. So it's two. My neo there's avodah zarah. It's one sin that's equal to two. It's what is it referring to? Avodah zarah. The Shvat says Yisham says, "Ami, my nation did two evils. They left me. They forsaken me. The source of living waters. What do they do to carve out to dig for themselves? Broken cisterns, cisterns, broken cisterns. So they sinned by worshiping these idols, and they left me. What did they gain? Nothing. Broken cisterns. That's what they got. Broken nothingness. And they left me the source of living water. It says about them, Ivru Ie Ketiyim, the islands of the Ketiyim, they passed. Ki Ivru Ie Ketiyim Uru and sea. Go there, Ivru, pass over there, pass there and see. The Kedar Shilchu is Bainanu Ma'id, and send to Kedar and think about it. And Himer Goyalakim, does the Goyim, do they do Tmura? Do they switch their God? The Himalaya and they don't even have gods. And Ami, Himer Kavoidi, Bloyoil, in my nation, they switched me. They did Tmura. They switched me for no benefit. Taanis, it was learned in a brisa that Kutiyim oivdim laish, the Kutiyim worship the fire, Kedariyim oivdim lamayim, the Kedars worship water. And even though they know that the fire, the water puts out the fire, so nevertheless they still they didn't exchange their gods. And they didn't switch their God. And my nation changed its glory, or they changed Hashem for no benefit, with no benefit. So in other words, it's considered like two different Perushim. Mefarshim explain why is it considered two. One sin that's considered like two. So Rashi over here says that it's referring to the Kutiyim and the Kedarim. It seems like that's how he's explaining the two, that it's considered two two sins. Others explain it has to do with the fact that they gave up Hashem, and they one sin for giving up Hashem, and one sin for going and choosing nothingness. Or one sin is the first two Aseret Dibros is Anochi Hashem Alekecha and Lo Yiyalecha. So those would be the two sin. One sin that's equal to two. Different Perushim are given about this. But the Yidden were worse than both the Kutiyim and Kedarim. They don't even exchange there. They stick with them, even though there's no benefit for them. But my nation, not only do they switch me, but they don't benefit at all. So it could be that's how Rashi's learning. Two is that it's not only did they switch me, but they have no benefit. But it seems maybe more that he's saying two. The two is the Kutiyim and the Kedarim. In any event, these are the two sins that are equal to one. It's the Avodah Zarah. So that's basically the explanation of the Gemara. Primarily, Rav Nachman says, Rav Yitzchok, what's another pshat? Another pasuk. What does it mean? They kasher Zakin Shmuel, and Shmuel got old. Misav Shmuel kolei hai. Did Shmuel really get old? He was 52 when he died. The Damer Mart says, Master said, it was said in a brisa that Meisva Chamishim Shtayim Shana, he died at 52. This is the death of the Navi Shmuel from Ramah. Amar Lei. So Rabbi Yitzchok answered him that what does it mean? It was Kasher Zakin. Old age came upon him. He looked old. It says, says, I regret that I anointed Shaul. So Shmuel said in front of Hashem, you have equated me to Moshe and Aaron. It says Moshe and Aaron, it says Moshe and Aaron in their kahuna, and Shmuel among those who call Hashem's name. So you equaled me to them, put me in the same pasuk, implying like I'm equal. And Moshe and Aaron, just like Moshe and Aaron didn't their Maaseh Yadav, the work of their hand, the produce, their accomplishments was not destroyed in their lifetime. And it has to do with the fact that Yeshua survived, and he was considered, interestingly, he was considered a student of Aaron also, not just of Moshe. And basically, so Yeshua was their student, and Rashi brings this over here from Eruvin that he was also a student of Aaron, and Aaron would teach them as well. So of course we know Yeshua was a student of Moshe, but here the Gemara, you see in the Gemara that he was a student of Aaron also, and it's explained over there in Eruvin that because when Moshe left, Aaron used to teach. He would teach next. He would give the review, I guess, and so. Ultimately, Aaron ultimately Yeshua was a student. So anyway, their Maisi Adehem, the produce, their accomplishment was not destroyed in their lifetime. So Shmuel also wanted that the work of his hand, his accomplishment, shouldn't be destroyed in his lifetime, and he didn't want Shaul to die in his life. So Hashem had a big problem. It was in a bind because the Lema Shaul, it says let Shaul die like a Shavik Shmuel. The Shmuel said he doesn't want. He doesn't want him to die in his lifetime. So Lema Shmuel, I should let Shmuel die. Ad Zutter, he's young. Lema Shmuel Ad Zutter, let him die. Excuse me. That's part of the statement. Lema Shmuel Ad Zutter, let Shmuel die young. Meranana Basrei. People will say that maybe he had some sin or. So Lema Shmuel, and I shouldn't let Shaul die or Shmuel die. But he gave Malchus David. The reign of David has already arrived, and I can't bin Malchus Nagas v'chaverta. Even a hair's breadth. You can't have one kingdom touching the next kingdom. In other words, I got to finish one to bring on the other one. Can't have them both stepping on each other's toes. Amar Hakadosh Baruch Hu akbetz olav zikna. So Hashem said, you know what? I'll make him look old. And this way, people won't have lashon hara to say about Shmuel. And I know Shaul Yoshev v'Giva tachas Eishel b'Rama. Shaul was sitting in Giva under the Eishel tree in Rama. So what does this mean? Giva Eitzel Rama. How could he be in Giva? How is Giva next to Rama? How could you have Giva next to Rama? Giva is one territory, and Rama is somewhere else. They bring Givas in Binyamin, and Rama is in Ephraim, two different tribal areas. So it rather tells you what caused that Shaul will still live 2.5 years. What caused him to live in Giva? It's the prayer of Shmuel Haramasi. So that's what it means. So this answers the question. What does it mean that Shmuel got old? It means he got old because of this whole thing that he davened to Hashem that Shaul shouldn't die in his lifetime. So it ended up that he got old, and this way people won't say anything negative when he dies early at the age of 52. We mentioned that when it says of Elazar ben Azariah in the Haggadah that he's I'm like I'm 70 years old because he was a Gilgal of Shmuel. And he was 80. Shmuel lived 52 years, and he's now 18. So he's 70 years old, right? That was the famous understanding of in the Haggadah of I'm 70 years old because he's really like a continuation of Shmuel. Okay, the Gemara continues on page. If you have the article, page 5b2. If you have the article 5b2. Does a person get pushed aside for another person? Like how could Shmuel is ultimately dying because of David, because of and Shaul and Shmuel. So they're dying for because actually Rashi brings just Shmuel. Rashi brings that Shmuel is pushed aside because of David. Marian says in yes. Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Reb Yonason. Shmuel bar Nachmani says in the name of Reb Yonason that my dechsev al chatzavti al kain chatzavti benavim haragtim bimrefi. That therefore al kain chatzavti benavim, I have carved out in the prophets haragtim beimrefi, and I have killed them with the words of my mouth. What does it mean? But my family, it doesn't say they have died because of their actions. They did something wrong. Rather, with the word of my mouth, because I decreed that another king should be king. So Alma Mitcha Gaber Mikami Gaber, you see, one person could be pushed aside for another. I guess the reason why Rashi doesn't mention Shaul, because Shaul is not really being pushed aside because of David. Shaul is pushed aside really. Shaul is dying because he's supposed to die. It's Shmuel who is really being pushed aside. He's dying because of David. If not for David, Shmuel would have lived. Shaul also would have lived, but Shaul would have lived, but Shaul deserved to be pushed aside. So that the Gemara is not surprised. Okay, Rav Nachman, Rav Yitzchok, here comes the famous Gemara over here about Yaakov Avinu loy meis, that Yaakov didn't die. So it says Nachman Rav Yitzchok, we're sitting in a Suda. Rav Nachman Rav Yitzchok, Lemar Milsa. So Rav Nachman told Rav Yitzchok, no, let Master say a Dvar Torah. Amalei, he says. So Rav Yitzchok said, Rav Yechanan said in Masichem Suda, you can't talk during a meal. Shema Yaktim Kana Leveshet, because maybe someone's kana, the food will go down the kana before the veshet. The veshet is the food pipe. The kana is the windpipe. You want to ask a question, Mordechai, or your hand is just up? Okay. Yes, not. Did you want to ask something, Mordechai? No. Okay, so Shemi Yakim Kana Leveshet, we believe a sakana person will come to a sakana if the food goes down the wrong pipe. So it could be a danger. And therefore you shouldn't speak during a meal. So Basasod, after they ate, so Amalei Hachi Rav Yechanan, so Rav Yitzchok said, okay, now I'll tell you a little bit. You want me to say something? So I'll say something. So he says, Hachi Rav Yechanan, as Rav Yechanan said, Yaakov vino loy meis, Yaakov didn't die. Okay, that's what a statement. Yaakov vino loy meis. So Amalei, so Rav Nachman, of course, asked him the obvious question. For nothing, for nothing did they give him a eulogy? They embalmed him, which basically means they sprinkled smelling spices on top of him. But for nothing did they bury him. So Amalei, Migrani Darish, I'm darshaning a pasuk. Shenem, as it says, Vatal Hira Yaakov, Abdi Yaakov, no Hashem. Don't be afraid, my servant Yaakov, says Hashem. Al-Techos Yisrael, and don't be afraid, Israel. Do not be afraid. Ki hineni meishiach meirachik. I am going to redeem you from afar. And v'zarcha me'eretz shivim, and I will redeem your children from the land of their captivity. And so, what do we see? I'll redeem you from afar, and their children. So what this means is that I am going to redeem you and your children, that even you will be redeemed. So Makishula Zarai.
Rabbi, yes. I lost the place. Can you just tell us the place?
Yeah, we are holding on 5B, and we are the third wide line. So it's about maybe 8 or 9 lines, 10 lines from the bottom of the page. 5B, 10 lines.
Thank you.
So it says that this pasuk says that I'm going to redeem you from afar and your children from the land of their captivity. So the Gemara says, we're comparing the children, him to his children. Meaning we're comparing Yaakov to Yisrael, we're comparing him to his children, and Mazar B'chayim Afu B'chayim, just like he's alive, also his children are alive. So that implies that that he didn't die. And Rashi seems to take this very literally. Alma Ela Chayhu L'Yolam, he lives forever. That's a very interesting statement. And
it's interesting. You don't see this idea of Chaim. You don't see it by Avram and Yitzchok. You see it only specifically by Yaakov.
Yeah. The commentaries ask that. They ask why they say that it has to do with the fact that Yaakov was the only one that his kids, all of them, really kept on the things. It's just like his kids are alive, so he's also alive, but they're all following in his path. They do mention it that Yaakov had this, at least in a more complete way. But I was mentioning that Rashi starts off saying Chayhu Lo'ilam, and then Rashi afterwards, even when the Gemara concludes that I'm darshaning a pasuk, he again says like a similar thing. Nidma lahem shemes. It seemed like he died. He died of a chai haya, but really he lived. Like Rashi ends off like that's a very like simple thing. And gosh, Yisrael.
Rabbi, question.
Yisrael Saba the chantu chantaya nidma lahem shemes. Yeah, that's right.
So, in other places where they use the double terminology of Yaakov and Israel, it is normally darshaned as being one is respect to the men and one with respect to the women. So why isn't it darshaned over here in the same thing?
I don't know about that it's men and women. I always understood it when the Yidden are following Hashem's commandments, it's Yisrael, and when they're in a low state, it's Yaakov.
No, there are places where it's the two terminologies are indicative of men and women, and that's why I'm asking this question over here. Why these may be expressions to both the men and the women, and perhaps shouldn't come up with this equation that basically says if they're alive, so are they, therefore Yaakov must be alive.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying maybe it's something connected to women only about the fact that
No, I'm saying it's just a poetic phrase in which it's one is directed to A and the other one is directed to B, but it's as I've seen it and as has been explained in other situations where the double terminology comes into play.
I'm saying so how do you want to explain it here? I'm saying how are you developing that question?
It's being directed to the men and the women. That's all. And that there's no and this equivalence of Yaakov being alive, that to me is a stretch.
Yeah, well, we're not darshan. First of all, what you said about base Yaakov is referring to like it's Yaakov refers to women and Yisrael refers to men. I'm just wondering that there is a pasuk that says in that base Yaakov that this is what you should tell the house of Yaakov repeat and tell it to the Bnei Yisrael Tagid and which does refer to women, but I'm not sure throughout Tanakh they continue with that way of understanding that Yaakov always means women. So that's something to look into. Maybe you recall always hearing it. In other words, that Yaakov always refers to women.
I'm just recalling this double expression that to me always stuck as being
which double expression? Altira of the Yaakov.
Yaakov and Yisrael. The fact that the double lashon is used to indicate to the men and to the women.
Okay, so maybe that is. It could be that it could be that's a pshat. I'm not familiar with such a pshat, but the main point that we're saying here is from the end of the pasuk, not that beginning. The beginning is what you're discussing about. Why is it saying both? Don't be afraid, my servant Yaakov, and don't be afraid, Yisrael, because I am going to redeem you from afar and your children from the land of their captivity. So what the Gemara here is emphasizing is the end part of the pasuk. I'm going to redeem you, Moshiacha, from the Chaf, and Zaracha, and your children. That it's comparing him and his children, implying like just like his children are alive, and he's going to bring them back. So it sounds like he's also bringing you back. It sounds like in the same form, just like Hashem is going to bring us alive back to redeem us back to our land. So it sounds like he's bringing Yaakov back as well. So from the land of our captivity. So it sounds like he's in the same situation as his children, and they're both going to just be brought back instead of like, oh, you have to be resurrected first. No, it sounds like it's like in the same hassle it'll be for Hashem to bring us back. It'll be bringing the same, they're in the same situation. So the Gemara understands it to mean that it's that he's really alive. It's not going to include a resurrection. Now, the simple understanding, of course, learning such a Gemara is that it means it in a poetic sense that he's alive because his kids are alive. His kids are doing mitzvahs, and basically means that that he's alive. I'm just saying Rashi seems to understand it in a very practical, almost like literal sense. I mean, it seems like it's literal. And Taisus also doesn't seem to argue. He also says like, and you know what? It actually doesn't say Vayamas. It doesn't say he died. It says Vayigba. It doesn't say Vayamas. All the other people, whenever we have people dying, it says Vayamas. They died. Here it doesn't say Vayamas. So anyway, this is it's a Agadata Gemara. It's a Gemara that deserves thought and understanding, and of course all the commentaries discuss this, and it says that he didn't die. What does that mean? Deserves more thought. Okay, but I'm not sure what Ezra, did you want to say something specifically about the men and women are being told this? Like, is there some lesson from that? Not. That's the first part of the puzzle.
I'm just saying that the double lashon. I'm used to being men and women. So
I guess I should look into that if that's a common understanding throughout Tanakh. I've always understood it that it's Yaakov is always when the Yidden aren't doing mitzvahs, or they're involved in the challenges of mitzvahs, like Avdi Yaakov, and and Yisrael is more in the name of a sar, so sar like a minister, a noble, and Yaakov is more during the struggle. Anyway, so the Altira Avdi Yaakov, it's a famous song on Mitzvah Shabbos. Altira Avdi Yaakov, don't be afraid, my servant Yaakov, and it refers to Yaakov going into the weekday, getting ready for the week, that he's going to get back into after Shabbos. He has to lower himself to the hard work of dealing with the secular world and the mundane world. And he's called Yaakov. He's my servant Yaakov. Don't be afraid. You can go and it's a famous song on Mitzvah Shabbos. Okay. Anyway, we can continue now with the next little piece. Amar Rabbi Yitzchok says another statement of Rabbi Yitzchok and his friend Rav Nachman. So Rav Yitzchok, Amar Rav Yitzchok, Rachav. Whoever says Rachav, he says the name Rachav, the wife of Yeshua, the one who put up Kalev and Pinchas when they came to spy out Yericho. So her name was Rachav. She was different opinions if she had a little inn there. Was she a real Zaina? Was she a prostitute, or was she just a Zaina from the word Mazain? She had a little store there with the that sold a convenience store, or was she had an inn? Anyway, bottom line is Yeshua married her, and if she was supposed to be one of the most beautiful women. So it says if a person says her name, Miyad Nikri, he immediately will have a seminal discharge. So Amalei, Rav Nachman said to him, to Rav Yitzchok, I said it and it didn't affect me. When does this apply? When do I say that it'll have an effect, that you'll have a seminal emission? It's only if you knew her and you were familiar with her, and which is interesting, was why is he telling who in the time of the Gemara knew her? Why would he say this type of? Why is he saying this? Like, what does it benefit us to know? They would say, we spoke about it a little. I think what practical, or at least we asked this question: what practical application does this have? Why is it mentioning it? What can we learn from this? I mean, obviously, it's telling you that the person shouldn't do things that might lead to a seminal emission if someone. But it's an interesting statement. Why do you have to say it twice? Rachav, Rachav. Okay. When they were separating from each other, so Amar Lei Levarchan Mar. So Rav Nachman wanted a blessing from Rav Yitzchok. Amar Lei. So Rav Yitzchok said to him, Emshalach Mashal, I will give you a parable. Midbar. So this is similar to a person going in the desert. Vayarayev, he was hungry. Vayef, tired. Tzami, thirsty. Matza Ilan Shapiresav Besukin. He found a tree that's fruits were sweet. Tzilay Noya, nice shade. There was a stream of water under it. He ate from the fruits. He drank from the waters. And he sat in its shade. When he wanted to go, Amar, he said, Elon, Elon, tree, how should I bless you? If I will say that your fruits should be sweet, your fruits are sweet. That you have good shade. You have good shade. That you should, that the stream of water should flow under you. So it does already. It flows under you. But it should be your will. It should be Hashem's will that all the plantings, the Sabbath that are planted, for the shoots that are planted from you, from your tree. Next page, Vav Amud Aleph, 6a. They should be just like you. So now Reb Yitzchok says, and now Reb Nachman, how should I bless you? If I bless you with Torah, Torah, you have Torah, you have wealth, you have wealth. Children, you have children. You want to see that your children should be like you, and that fits exactly with what he was saying before about the Yaakov Avinu Loimei, seemingly, that his children are Mazarei B'chayim, Afu B'chayim. So what he's basically saying is your children should be just like you. Okay, then the Gemara continues and says, Tanaraban Yera Shemayra Esabriyos. Yera means that it teaches the people. It prepares them. La'atiach Gaguseyam. To cement, to tar their roofs, plaster their roofs. La'afnes as per sayam, and to bring in their fruits or the grain, and to do all their needs to prepare for the rainy season. So then that's why the term Yer is. It's the first rains. Another pshat, Shemarabe as haaretz, saturates the land. Umashkas ada dehoim, and it waters it until the depths. To Shneimar it says to Lameha Rave, it's it saturates the furrows. Naches gidudeha, it brings nachas to its gedud, its troops. Berevivim to Megigena, with the revivim are the rains, the rain showers. You soften it. In other words, you soften the earth. Simcha tevare, its growths you bless. So we see from here that Tilameha Rave, it saturates the furrows. So that's the concept of Merave es Haaretz, and it's Mashke Ada Tehoim. It's Tilameha Rave Naches Gedudeha Bervivim to Bagigana Tzimcha Dvar. I'm not really sure how you see Ada Tehoim. Maybe it's not proving Ada Tehoim that it waters it until the depths. Is that really proven from that pasuk, or are we just showing that Yoira comes from the word Rave? It saturates it. Maybe just showing the word, maybe Shemerava, because Talameha Rave. So it's showing that it refers to that it's a lot of saturation. Maybe it doesn't necessarily prove until the depths. I'm just looking over here. Yeah. Okay. So the next opinion, the next explanation, to davar acher, another pshat is Yeresh Yer Benachas. It Yera means it falls pleasantly, and like a teacher, yoyre from the word teacher, ve'ena yoyred b'zaf, and it doesn't come with anger, with pressure, it falls gently. So now the Gemara says, "Ayena elay sheyoyre shemayr masher elay shemasher." Maybe yoyre is that it falls, it causes the fruits that they fall off. So mashatif mashav as azra, maybe it washes away the it floods the seeds. The mashav as ilanos, it floods the trees. Talmud Lemer malkoish. The Torah says malkoish, and malkoish levracha. Yer levracha. It says when asati matar artzchem beita yera malkoish, right? So the yera and malkoish go right next to each other. So the Gemara says you compare the two. Just like malkoish is for sure, it's a blessing. So also yera is a blessing. Now Rashi explains why maybe malkoish is the Gemara asks, malkush el shemapelis avata. Maybe malkush is that it destroys the houses of shaber esoilanis. It breaks the trees malas sakoyim, and it raises the locusts. So the Gemara says tamalama yora. My yora lebracha malkush lebracha. That yora, it says yora right next to it. Yora means a bracha. Also malkush is bracha. But what the Gemara says, what do you mean? We're trying to prove what yora is. We said malkush is a bracha, but we said maybe malkush is not a bracha. Oh, but it's next to yora. Yora is a bracha. But what do you mean? We don't know if yora gufayim and all. So how do we know yora is a bracha? So the chsiv, as it says, of Bnei Tzion gilu v'simchu b'Hashem alokechem, that Bnei Tzion, the children of Tzion, be glad, be joyous, and rejoice in Hashem your God. He nasan lachem as hamoira l'tzedakah. He gives you moira, the yora rain for tzedakah, for charity. Of a yorid lachem geshem moira malkash berishain, and he brought down rain for you in the first month. So just like over here, so basically we see from here that the term is used for bracha, that yora is a bracha, that malkush is a bracha, and ultimately these terms are these are blessings for the earth to have the yora and the malkush. We're going to stop here with Tana Rabbanon Yora b'Marcheshet. We're halfway down 6a. We're going to stop here. Have a wonderful Shabbos, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Good Shabbos, everybody.
Shalom.